The wind howled through the crumbling ruins of New Chicago, carrying whispers of a long-lost civilization. I stood atop a dilapidated skyscraper, the jagged edges of glass glinting like teeth in the fading light. It was a city where dreams had once soared high, now reduced to mere shadows of a past I could barely imagine. They called me Jax, a scavenger by necessity, a survivor by instinct. The Zenthari Empire ruled the remnants of humanity, but I had learned to navigate the wreckage, finding value in what others deemed worthless. Jax, a voice broke through my reverie. It was Rael, a wiry young man with eyes like storm clouds, always searching for the next opportunity. "You need to see this," he waved me down, urgency etched on his face. I clambered down the building, leaping from one broken ledge to another until I reached the ground. Rael led me to a hidden alcove, shielded from the prying eyes of Zenthari patrols. The flickering light of a salvaged lantern a metal chest, intricately engraved with symbols that pulsed with a faint blue glow. "What is it?" I asked, crouching beside him, my curiosity piqued. "Found it in the basement of a burnt-out library," he replied, his voice a mix of awe and excitement. "I think it's a weapon, an ancient human weapon." The thought of an ancient weapon sent a thrill through my veins. It could be our ticket to fighting back against the Zenthari, who had ruled us for millennia with their advanced technology and ruthless efficiency. "Open it," I urged. Rael fumbled with the latches, and with a resounding click, the chest creaked open. Inside lay a sleek metallic structure, its surface smooth and cool to the touch. It resembled a rifle, but had an otherworldly design, unlike anything I had ever seen. "What do you think it does?" he asked, eyes wide with anticipation. "I don't know, but it looks powerful," I replied, my mind racing with possibilities. "We need to get it to the others." As we lifted the weapon out of the chest, the air around us thickened with an electric tension. Suddenly, a rumble echoed through the ground. We shared a glance, a shared instinct kicking in. "Move!" I shouted, shoving the weapon into Rael's hands as I sprinted toward the nearest exit. We burst out of the alcove just as the ground shook violently. A Zenthari patrol had arrived, their hovercrafts descending from the gray sky, searchlights sweeping across the ruins. My heart raced as we ducked behind a crumbling wall, the beam of light, the shadows we occupied. "Where are we going?" Rael whispered, his voice tense. "Back to the safe house," I replied, scanning the area. The safe house was a rundown bar, its walls still standing despite the years of decay. It was where the remnants of humanity gathered, a flicker of hope amid the darkness. But as we edged toward our destination, I felt a knot of unease twist in my stomach. The Zenthari were always one step ahead. We navigated through the labyrinth of debris, adrenaline coursing through our veins. Every step felt like a dance with danger, but we had the weapon now. It could change everything. As we neared the safe house, the dim light spilling from its cracked windows beckoned us like a lifeline. But just as we reached the entrance, a loud crash echoed behind us. I turned, heart sinking as a group of Zenthari soldiers emerged from the shadows, their sleek armor glinting ominously. "There they are," one of them shouted, raising a weapon that resembled the very one we carried. "Run!" I yelled, adrenaline fueling my legs as we darted through the door and into the safe house. Inside, the atmosphere was tense, filled with hushed voices and wary glances. Our group of survivors had gathered, each person carrying their own scars from the war. They looked up as we stumbled in, breathless and wild-eyed. "What happened?" asked Marcus, our unofficial leader, a grizzled veteran who had seen more than his fair share of battles. His gaze landed on the weapon in Rael's hands. "Is that what I think it is?" "It might be," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of excitement and fear. "We found it in the ruins. It could help us fight back against the Zenthari." Marcus stepped closer, examining the weapon. "This could turn the tide of the war," he said, his tone serious. "But we need to understand how it works. If it's as powerful as it looks, we can't afford to lose it." As the group gathered around, I felt a spark of hope ignite within me. We were more than just survivors now. We were potential warriors, armed with the remnants of humanity's forgotten glory. But as we began to discuss our next steps, The door burst open. A figure rushed in, panting heavily, eyes wide with terror. "They're coming. The Zenthari found us." The words hung in the air, heavy with dread. The Zenthari were relentless, and they would stop at nothing to crush us. "We need to move, now," I shouted, adrenaline surging through me once more. As chaos erupted, I glanced at the weapon. We were running out of time, and if we didn't act fast, our chance to reclaim our world would slip through our fingers like sand. In that moment, I knew we had to harness the power of the weapon. But to do so, we would need more than just courage. We would need to unlock the secrets hidden within it, a task that might demand everything we had left. With that thought echoing in my mind, we dashed into the darkness, prepared to face whatever the Zenthari threw at us. We sprinted through the narrow alleyways of New Chicago, the faint glow of the Zenthari searchlights slicing through the darkness like knives. Each flash was a reminder of our precarious existence, a life spent in the shadows of a once great civilization. I could hear the thudding of my heart in my ears, drowning out the chaos behind us. Rael and I led the way, weaving through debris while Marcus and the others followed closely, urgency in every step. "Where to now?" Rael gasped, his breath coming in sharp bursts. "Back to the bunker," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding us. The bunker was a series of tunnels beneath the city, remnants of a pre-war subway system. If we could reach it, we'd have a chance to regroup and plan our next move. As we rounded a corner, a sharp explosion rattled the ground, sending us tumbling to the ground. Dust and debris filled the air, blinding us momentarily. I shielded my face, feeling the heat of the blast wash over me. The Zenthari were relentless, using their advanced weaponry to hunt us down. "Get up!" Marcus shouted, his voice cutting through the haze. We scrambled to our feet, adrenaline coursing through our veins. "Did you see where that came from?" I yelled, trying to keep my voice steady. "Not a clue," Rael replied, his eyes wide with fear. "But we need to keep moving." We pressed on, navigating the maze of ruins with instinct as our guide. The bunker entrance was just ahead, a crumbling staircase leading down into the darkness. We descended quickly, the sounds of the Zenthari forces fading as we entered the relative safety of the underground. Inside, the air was cool and stale, the faint glow of emergency lights casting eerie shadows on the walls. The bunker was a sanctuary, filled with makeshift beds, supplies scavenged from the surface, and the remnants of humanity's hopes. It was a refuge where we could regroup and plan our next move. "Barricade the entrance," Marcus commanded, his authoritative tone cutting through the tension. "We can't let them find us here." We rushed to the entrance, stacking crates and debris in a makeshift barricade. The noise of our movements echoed in the confined space, but we had no choice. If the Zenthari discovered our hiding place, it would mean the end for all of us. Once secured, we gathered in the main area of the bunker, the flickering lights the anxious faces of our group. "We need to understand that weapon," Marcus said, gesturing toward the ancient firearm resting on a table. "It could change everything for us, but we need to know how to use it." Rael stepped forward, his brow furrowed with determination. "I can help. I've studied old war tech. There's a chance I can decipher its function." "Then let's get to work," I said, my heart racing at the prospect of uncovering its secrets. I could feel the weight of our future resting on our shoulders. As Rael examined the weapon, I turned to the others. "We need to scout for supplies and gather any information we can about the Zenthari's movements. If we're going to launch a counterattack, we need to know what we're up against." I paired off with Marcus, leaving Rael to tinker with the weapon. As we stepped outside the bunker, the night air hit us like a wave, sharp and cold. The streets were eerily silent, save for the distant hum of Zenthari hovercrafts patrolling the skies. "Keep low," Marcus instructed, his eyes scanning the surroundings. They could be anywhere. We crept through the shadows, moving cautiously toward a nearby building that had once been a hub of human activity. It was now nothing more than a skeleton, its walls covered in graffiti remnants of our resistance. "We should check for any supplies or intel," I whispered. As we entered, the smell of mildew and decay filled the air. The floorboards creaked beneath our weight, but we pressed on, our resolve unyielding. We rummaged through the debris, finding remnants of the past old weapons, ration packs, and faded maps detailing the city layout. "Look at this," Marcus said, holding up a crumpled piece of paper. It was a map of the city, marked with various locations, including Zenthari outposts. "If we can gather enough intel, we can plan an ambush." Suddenly, a sound echoed from the shadows. We froze, straining to hear. It was faint but distinct a voice. "You hear that?" I whispered, adrenaline spiking. Marcus nodded, his grip tightening on his weapon. We should investigate. As we moved deeper into the building, we crept toward the source of the sound. The voice grew clearer, a conversation in hushed tones. We paused outside a doorway, straining to listen. "We need to secure the perimeter," a Zenthari soldier said. "The humans are getting bolder. We can't let them get their hands on the weapon." My heart raced at the mention of the weapon. They knew about it. "We need to get back to the others," I whispered to Marcus. "Agreed. Let's move." As we retraced our steps, I couldn't shake the sense of urgency weighing down on me. The Zenthari were closing in, and if we didn't act fast, the weapon would be lost to us. When we returned to the bunker, Rael was still hunched over the ancient firearm, his brow furrowed in concentration. "What did you find?" he asked, glancing up as we entered. "The Zenthari know about the weapon," I replied, a knot tightening in my stomach. "They're actively searching for it." Rael's eyes widened, and he immediately returned his focus to the weapon. "Then we need to figure this out fast. I think I can access its systems, but it'll take time." "Time is something we don't have," Marcus said, his voice steady. "We need to buy you some. We have to distract the Zenthari." I felt a surge of determination. "We can set up a false trail, lead them away from the bunker, while Rael works on the weapon." Marcus nodded, a fierce glint in his eyes. "I'll take a team to draw them out. We'll make it look like we're raiding a nearby supply depot." I glanced around at our ragtag group, their faces filled with a mix of fear and resolve. This was our moment to fight back, to reclaim our world from the clutches of the Zenthari. "We have one chance at this," I said, my voice steadying. "Let's show them what humanity is capable of." The plan was simple but perilous. While Rael worked on deciphering the ancient weapon, Marcus and a small team would create a diversion to lure the Zenthari forces away from our bunker. It was risky, but desperation often leads to audacity, and in our case, it was a matter of survival. We gathered supplies, old explosives salvaged from the ruins, and rations we could spare. The group had grown closer during our struggle, sharing stories and forging bonds that ran deeper than mere survival. Now, we were united by a common purpose, to reclaim our world. "Let's move out," Marcus said, his voice steady and commanding. He assigned roles to each member of the team, making sure we understood the plan. I was tasked with ensuring Rael had everything he needed, while Marcus took charge of the diversion. As Marcus led his team toward the Zenthari outpost, I felt a mix of pride and anxiety. They were putting their lives on the line for a cause that had become so personal to us all. I turned to Rael, who was still hunched over the weapon, his fingers dancing over its ancient controls. "How's it going?" I asked, leaning over his shoulder. "It's more complex than I anticipated," he replied, frustration creeping into his voice. "The technology is thousands of years old, but it's advanced in ways I can barely comprehend. There's a power core here that seems to be linked to its firing mechanism, but I need more time to analyze it." "Time is what we're short on," I reminded him, glancing toward the bunker entrance. "Marcus and the others are risking everything out there." Rael's brow furrowed, determination etched into his features. "I know. I'll do my best. Just keep an eye on the entrance. If they come back, we can't afford to be caught off guard." I nodded and took my position near the entrance, listening intently. The silence was suffocating, punctuated only by the distant sounds of skirmishes as Marcus's team engaged the Zenthari. Every explosion made my heart race, a mix of fear and hope as I prayed they would succeed in their diversion. Minutes felt like hours as I stood watch, my mind racing with what-ifs. What if the Zenthari overpowered Marcus? What if they discovered our bunker? The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on me, but I couldn't let it paralyze me. "Almost there," Rael muttered, pulling my attention back to him. He was sweating, his hands shaking slightly as he worked. "I just need to reroute the power supply to the firing mechanism." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed outside, causing me to jump. My heart raced as I rushed to the entrance. "They're here!" I shouted. Rael looked up, panic flashing in his eyes. "I'm not ready." "Just keep working. I'll handle this," I replied, grabbing my weapon and moving toward the entrance. Peering through the makeshift barricade, I saw silhouettes moving in the darkness, their Zenthari armor glinting in the dim light. The faint sounds of Marcus's team could still be heard, but it was clear they were retreating, drawing the Zenthari closer to us. "Get ready," I hissed at Rael, my heart pounding in my chest. With a surge of adrenaline, I pushed the barricade aside, stepping into the open air. The night was alive with chaos. I spotted Marcus and his team, engaged in a fierce firefight, their backs against the wall of a crumbling building. "Fall back," Marcus yelled, his voice cutting through the din of battle. I fired a warning shot into the air, gaining their attention. "Over here, we're still in the bunker," I shouted, gesturing for them to join us. One by one, they broke away from the fight, retreating toward our position. I covered them, my shots ringing true as I aimed for the advancing Zenthari, buying them precious seconds. Just as Marcus reached the bunker entrance, a blinding flash of light erupted from the Zenthari lines. I turned in time to see an energy blast soaring toward us. "Get down," I yelled, throwing myself against the ground. The blast hit the edge of the bunker, sending debris flying. Pain shot through my shoulder as I hit the ground, the force knocking the breath from my lungs. I blinked against the dust and debris, disoriented for a moment. "Are you okay?" Marcus shouted, kneeling beside me, concern etched on his face. "I'm fine," I gasped, pushing myself up. "We need to move." Rael was already at the table, frantically working. "I'm almost there," he called out, his voice laced with determination. Marcus glanced around, gauging our situation. "We need to reinforce the entrance. They're going to follow us here." We quickly set to work, reinforcing the barricade with whatever we could find. The sound of Zenthari footsteps grew closer, and I could hear their voices, commands being shouted in their guttural language. The tension in the air was palpable. "Now," Rael yelled, and I turned to see him holding the weapon, its barrel glowing faintly. I figured out how to activate it. "Let's hope it works," I said, my heart pounding with anticipation. The Zenthari soldiers stormed through the entrance just as we finished reinforcing the barricade. I took aim, feeling a surge of adrenaline as I prepared to fire. "Fire!" Rael shouted. I pulled the trigger, the weapon unleashing a torrent of energy that did the room in a brilliant flash. The beam cut through the air, striking the lead Zenthari soldier and sending him sprawling backward. The impact was immediate. Chaos erupted as the Zenthari struggled to comprehend what was happening. "Keep firing," Marcus shouted, urging us on. We unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, each shot resonating with a primal fury. The Zenthari stumbled back, confusion etched on their faces as they tried to regain control of the situation. I felt a rush of exhilaration, a primal sense of power coursing through me. "Stay focused," I shouted, pushing my body to its limits as I fired shot after shot. The weapon felt alive in my hands, as though it was a part of me. Suddenly, the weapon emitted a low hum, a resonance that seemed to shake the very foundations of the bunker. Rael's eyes widened. "I think I can amplify it, if I channel more energy into the firing mechanism." "Do it," I yelled, adrenaline pumping through my veins. Rael quickly adjusted the settings, and I aimed the weapon toward the advancing Zenthari once more. The energy built within the weapon, the air crackling with electricity. "Now," I shouted, unleashing a powerful beam that cut through the Zenthari ranks. The energy wave erupted outward, causing them to scatter in panic. But just as victory seemed within reach, a chilling sound echoed through the bunker, the unmistakable hum of Zenthari reinforcements arriving. "We need to go," Marcus shouted, urgency clear in his voice. "They're going to overwhelm us." "Rael, can you shut the weapon down?" I asked, still aiming it toward the entrance. "I'm trying," he replied, his fingers flying over the controls. We had to regroup, to escape before we were caught in the oncoming storm. As I took one last shot, sending a Zenthari soldier crashing to the ground, I felt a sense of resolution wash over me. "Let's move," Marcus commanded, and we fell back deeper into the bunker, the sound of footsteps echoing behind us. We raced deeper into the bunker, the weight of our choices heavy on our shoulders. The narrow corridors twisted and turned, dimly lit by flickering overhead lights that struggled to stay alive. As we sprinted, I could hear the distant sounds of chaos erupting from the entrance, a cacophony of Zenthari commands mixed with the fading sounds of our makeshift defense. "Where are we headed?" I shouted over my shoulder to Marcus, who was leading the way. "There's an old control room up ahead," he replied. "It should have access to the external defenses. If we can activate the turrets, we can hold them off long enough to escape." We turned a sharp corner and skidded to a halt in front of a heavy metal door marked with a faded symbol, a representation of the ancient civilization that had built this bunker long ago. Marcus stepped up, frantically working the rusty mechanism, the tension palpable in the air. Come on," he muttered, sweat beading on his brow. Just as the door creaked open, a group of Zenthari soldiers burst into view from the shadows, their eyes gleaming with malevolent intent. "Get in," I shouted, shoving Marcus forward before raising my weapon. I fired off a few shots, trying to cover our retreat. The energy blasted the dim corridor, striking true and sending one Zenthari soldier crashing to the ground. Marcus scrambled inside the control room, and I followed, slamming the door shut just as the sounds of gunfire intensified outside. The door held firm, but the Zenthari were relentless. I could hear them banging against it, their guttural shouts echoing through the metal. "Lock it down," Marcus commanded, his fingers flying over a console filled with ancient controls, lights flickering in response to his touch. I turned to help, pressing buttons at random as the Zenthari pounded on the door. With a final, decisive slam, the door locked into place. We leaned against it, panting, listening to the chaos outside. For a brief moment, there was silence. "What now?" Rael asked, his voice trembling slightly. Marcus took a deep breath, regaining his composure. "We activate the turrets. They'll cover our escape." He continued working the controls, muttering to himself as he deciphered the ancient technology. I looked around the room, taking in the dimly lit monitors that lined the walls, most of them displaying static or unfamiliar symbols. "Do you have any idea how this works?" I asked, trying to help. "I think so," he replied, his focus unwavering. "This bunker was designed to withstand a siege. If I can get the external cameras online, we can see what we're up against." Suddenly, one of the monitors flickered to life, displaying a grainy view of the outside. Zenthari soldiers were swarming the entrance, their armor glinting ominously in the low light. My heart sank at the sight of them, ready to breach our last line of defense. "Marcus, hurry," I urged, my voice rising in urgency. "I'm almost there," he replied, frustration creeping into his tone. "Just need to reroute the power to the turrets." As he worked, I felt a surge of hope. We were on the verge of reclaiming our fate, but the weight of the Zenthari's relentless assault hung over us like a dark cloud. "Got it," Marcus shouted, a triumphant smile breaking through his anxiety. "The turrets are online." He pressed a final button, and the monitors flickered again, revealing a view of the turrets coming to life. The heavy, automated guns rotated, locking onto the Zenthari forces outside. "Now we just need to redirect the targeting protocols," he continued, rapidly typing commands into the console. The sound of gunfire erupted outside as the Zenthari began their assault on the door. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. We had mere moments before they broke through. "Marcus, we need to go now," I urged, glancing back at the door as it shook violently. "I can't," he started, but I cut him off. "Don't you dare sacrifice yourself for this. We're in this together." I felt anger bubbling up, the thought of losing him after everything we had fought for igniting a fire within me. Marcus hesitated, the weight of our choices visible in his eyes. But in that moment, he nodded, determination replacing the doubt. "Okay, just a few more seconds." Suddenly, the door burst open, splintering wood flying across the room as Zenthari soldiers stormed in, weapons raised. "Now," I yelled, taking aim. Marcus fired the control, and the turrets sprang to life, their guns rotating toward the entrance. A hail of energy blast erupted, tearing through the Zenthari ranks and sending them reeling back. The chaos was deafening. I watched as Zenthari soldiers fell, their bodies collapsing under the onslaught of our newly activated defenses. "Let's go," Marcus shouted, pulling me toward the back of the control room, where an emergency exit was hidden behind a rusted door. We pushed through, emerging into a narrow alleyway behind the bunker. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burnt metal. "Where to?" I gasped, trying to catch my breath as we sprinted down the alley, glancing over our shoulders to see if the Zenthari were pursuing us. "We need to regroup with the others," Marcus replied, his eyes scanning the chaos. "There's an old transport shuttle a few blocks from here. It should still be operational." As we ran, the sounds of battle surrounded us, the night alive with the cries of combat. The city, once vibrant and bustling, was now a war-torn landscape filled with debris and echoes of the past. We turned a corner, and I skidded to a halt. Ahead of us lay a group of Zenthari soldiers, their armor glinting in the dim light as they patrolled the area, unaware of our presence. "Quiet," I whispered, crouching low and signaling for Marcus and Rael to follow suit. We ducked behind a pile of rubble, our breaths quickening as we watched the Zenthari move closer. My heart raced, adrenaline surging as I glanced at Marcus. "Do we take them out?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "We have to," he replied, his eyes narrowing in determination. "It's our only chance." We exchanged glances, and with a nod, we prepared to strike. The three of us huddled behind the crumbling wall, the tension in the air palpable. My mind raced as I weighed our options, the faint hum of the Zenthari soldiers' weaponry sending shivers down my spine. "On my mark," Marcus whispered, his voice steady. I nodded, adrenaline flooding my system. I focused on the nearest Zenthari, a towering figure clad in dark armor, his weapon slung casually over his shoulder. It was now or never. 3, 2, 1, go. We burst from our cover simultaneously, charging toward the Zenthari. I aimed for the soldier on the left, a quick flick of my wrist as I fired off a pulse shot. The energy bolt struck true, hitting him squarely in the chest. He stumbled back, surprise etched on his face as he crumpled to the ground. Marcus and Rael were hot on my heels. Marcus tackled the second soldier to the ground, grappling for control of his weapon. Rael rushed to my side, firing at another Zenthari who had turned to investigate the noise. The air crackled with energy as the Zenthari scrambled to respond. I could hear their guttural shouts, their coordinated efforts to retaliate. "Watch your six," Rael yelled as he fired again, narrowly missing a soldier who dove for cover. "Keep moving," Marcus shouted, finally overpowering his opponent and wrenching the Zenthari's weapon free. "We have to reach the shuttle." With a burst of speed, we raced down the alley, dodging energy blasts that ricocheted off the walls. The Zenthari were relentless, their instincts honed from centuries of war. I could feel their eyes on us, their determination to capture or kill us evident in the frantic pursuit. We rounded another corner, the transport shuttle now in sight, a battered relic of an older age parked haphazardly between two buildings. It looked like it had seen better days, but in our situation, it would have to do. "Cover me," Marcus yelled as he dashed for the shuttle, his heart pounding in his chest. Rael and I turned, aiming our weapons toward the incoming Zenthari. A few more shots rang out as the soldiers closed the gap. their determination to stop us intensifying. "Let's create a distraction," I suggested, desperate to buy Marcus more time. Rael nodded, already formulating a plan. "On 3, we fire and draw their attention." We both counted down, and on 3, we unleashed a flurry of energy blast into the air, the beams, the darkening sky. The Zenthari halted for a moment, surprised by our sudden onslaught. Taking advantage of their confusion, Marcus reached the shuttle, fumbling with the door controls. Come on," he shouted, his fingers dancing across the panel. The Zenthari recovered quickly, their cries echoing behind us as they regained their composure and advanced. "Almost there," Marcus shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. Rael and I continued to fire, trying to hold off the incoming wave of Zenthari. My heart raced as I caught a glimpse of one soldier raising a weapon to fire at Marcus, his focus solely on the door. "No," I shouted, raising my weapon to aim. In one swift motion, I pulled the trigger, sending an energy bolt straight into the Zenthari's chest. He staggered back, giving Marcus the opening he needed. The door hissed open, and Marcus dove inside just as the Zenthari charged forward. "Get in," he yelled, motioning for us to follow. We bolted toward the shuttle, diving inside just as Rael fired one last shot, hitting a Zenthari soldier squarely in the shoulder. We slammed the door shut, sealing ourselves inside. "Marcus, get it powered up," I urged, glancing back at the door as the Zenthari pounded against it, their shouts echoing in the cramped space. "I'm on it," he shouted, frantically flipping switches and pressing buttons. The old controls flickered to life, sputtering in response to his commands. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down as I scanned the cockpit. The interior was cramped, filled with outdated technology that I had only seen in the archives of human history. I'd read about ships like this, relics of a bygone era when humanity had soared across the stars. "Power systems are online," Marcus announced, his voice rising with excitement. "We just need to engage the thrusters." "Do it," I shouted, my pulse quickening. The Zenthari outside were relentless, their pounding echoing through the shuttle as they tried to force their way inside. With a final flick of a switch, Marcus activated the thrusters. The shuttle shuddered, the engines roaring to life, filling the cockpit with a low hum. "Hold on," he yelled as he pushed the throttle forward. The shuttle lurched, and we shot upward into the night sky, leaving the chaos of the city below. I glanced out the window, watching as the Zenthari grew smaller, their shouts fading into the distance. "Now what?" Rael asked, catching his breath. "We need to find a safe place to regroup," Marcus replied, his eyes focused on the controls. "There's a hidden base not far from here. It was used during the war as a last-ditch effort to launch counterattacks against the Zenthari. It should still be operational." I could feel the adrenaline subsiding, replaced by the weight of what we had just accomplished. We had survived an ambush, activated ancient technology, and stolen a shuttle from right under the Zenthari's noses. "Let's hope we can make it there in one piece," I said, trying to remain optimistic. But for now, we were alive, and we had the means to fight back. The shuttle trembled slightly as we ascended into the night sky, the engines roaring like ancient beasts breaking free from their confines. The familiar sights of the sprawling Zenthari city faded behind us, the vibrant lights dimming into the darkness. It was a strange feeling, exhilaration mixed with the weight of impending danger. "Keep an eye on the sensors," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the chaos of the moment. "If the Zenthari send pursuit ships, we need to be ready." I nodded, shifting my gaze to the control panel. The screens flickered with data, displaying our trajectory and environmental readings. I could feel the pulse of the ship beneath me, its old systems straining yet functioning. It was a marvel of human engineering, even if it was a relic of a bygone era. "Heading towards the old base now," Marcus continued, fingers deftly working the controls. "It's cloaked, so we should be safe as long as we don't get too close to the Zenthari outposts." Rael sat beside me, scanning the surrounding space through the shuttle's small viewport. His expression was a mixture of awe and apprehension. It's surreal to think we're flying one of our ancestors' ships, he mused. To be doing this, it feels like we're reclaiming our heritage. Reclaiming is the right word, I replied, trying to suppress a surge of hope. But it's not enough. We need to find a way to turn the tide of this war. Rael nodded, his brow furrowing as he considered our next move. What do we know about the base? Will it have what we need? Marcus glanced at us, a determined glint in his eyes. It should have weaponry and supplies. The Resistance stored everything they could there. If it's still intact, we might be able to arm ourselves properly. Let's hope it is, I replied, my mind racing with possibilities. I thought of our people scattered across the galaxy, living in fear under the Zenthari regime. We needed more than just survival. We needed a plan, a way to rally our forces and take back our home. The shuttle's sensors beeped, pulling me from my thoughts. A warning indicator flashed, and I leaned closer to the display. Marcus, we have multiple contacts approaching from behind. There's Zenthari. Damn it, he muttered, his fingers flying across the controls. Hold on tight. The shuttle surged forward, but the Zenthari were relentless. I could see their sleek, menacing ships breaking through the clouds behind us, their weapon systems activating. The Zenthari were far superior in technology, but we had the advantage of surprise. Prepare for evasive maneuvers, Marcus shouted, steering the shuttle sharply to the left. The sudden movement sent us lurching against our restraints, the G-forces pressing us into our seats. I gritted my teeth, eyes locked on the incoming ships. Rael steadied himself beside me, his expression fierce. We can't outrun them forever. We need to fight back. I can take control of the rear defenses, I replied, my heart racing. We can't let them catch up. Do it, Marcus urged, a fierce determination in his voice. I grabbed the controls, accessing the shuttle's weapon systems. The interface was ancient but familiar, a testament to human ingenuity. I focused on the approaching Zenthari ships, my hand steady as I targeted the closest one. Firing, I announced, pressing the button with a firm resolve. The shuttle shuddered as a volley of energy bolts erupted from its rear cannons, the darkness with bright flashes. The bolt struck true, slamming into the lead Zenthari ship. It exploded in a burst of brilliant light, sending debris scattering through space. Yes, Rael shouted, adrenaline pumping through him. But there were too many of them. The remaining Zenthari ships retaliated, unleashing a torrent of energy blasts that ripped through the void. I felt the vibrations of near misses reverberate through the shuttle, each jolt a reminder of our precarious situation. Hold steady, Marcus yelled, trying to keep the ship stable as he continued to maneuver. We need to get to the base. Another bolt impacted the shuttle, the hull groaning in protest. Alarms blared, and I felt a surge of panic rise within me. We're taking damage. We need to. Focus on your firing, Marcus snapped, his voice sharp. We can't afford to lose this shuttle. With renewed determination, I locked onto another Zenthari ship, my heart pounding as I steadied my aim. Firing again, I shouted, squeezing the trigger with purpose. The energy bolt shot forth, striking the Zenthari ship and sending it spiraling out of control. It crashed into one of its companions, creating a chain reaction of destruction that lit up the void. Two down, Rael exclaimed, his excitement palpable. But we were still in danger. The remaining Zenthari ships regrouped, their formations tightening as they prepared for another assault. We need to gain altitude and break through their ranks, Marcus shouted, his hands steady on the controls. Can you make the jump to hyperspace? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. Not yet. We're too close to the Zenthari outposts. We need to get further away first, Marcus replied, determination etched on his face. Then let's create a diversion, Rael suggested, glancing at me. If we can draw some of their fire, we can escape. How do we do that? I asked, glancing at the sensors. Marcus smirked, a spark of inspiration igniting in his eyes. We overload the rear cannons. It'll create an explosion that should draw their attention. Are you crazy? I exclaimed, shocked at the suggestion. "Do you have a better idea?" he shot back. I hesitated, weighing the risks. The plan was reckless, but it might be our only chance. "All right," I relented. "Let's do it." "Get ready," Marcus said, determination flooding his voice. "On my mark, we'll fire at full power, then cut the engines and let the explosion do the rest." I nodded, adrenaline surging through me. "Let's finish this." "Now," Marcus shouted, and I activated the cannons, unleashing a barrage of energy bolts at maximum output. The rear of the shuttle trembled violently, a blinding flash the darkness as the energy bolts collided with the Zenthari ships. "Cut the engines," Marcus commanded. I did as instructed, the shuttle momentarily going dark as the engine shut down. The explosion from the rear cannons erupted in a brilliant display, a dazzling light show that drew the attention of the Zenthari fleet. "Now's our chance," Rael shouted, adrenaline rushing through him. Marcus seized the controls again, maneuvering the shuttle away from the chaos. I glanced back, heart racing as I watched the Zenthari ships converge on the explosion, their focus diverted. "Go, go, go," I urged, watching the chaos unfold behind us. The shuttle surged forward, the engines roaring back to life as we broke free from the immediate danger. "Hyperspace in 3, 2, 1, Marcus shouted, slamming the controls as we entered the jump. The stars around us blurred, swirling into lines of light as we slipped into hyperspace. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, the weight of our escape sinking in. "We did it," Rael breathed, a smile breaking across his face. "For now," I replied, my heart still racing. "But we need to regroup and prepare for what's next." The danger may have passed for the moment, but we were still far from safe. The Zenthari would pursue us, and we had a war to win. "Let's set a course for the base," Marcus said, determination clear in his voice. "We need to figure out our next move." As we sped through hyperspace, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. We had faced down death, survived against impossible odds, and stolen a piece of our heritage. The ancient weaponry of humanity was within our grasp, and we would not let it slip away again. The sensation of hyperspace faded into the familiar twinkling of stars as the shuttle emerged into the vast expanse of the galaxy. A palpable tension hung in the air, thick with uncertainty about what awaited us at the old Resistance base. I glanced at Marcus, who was intent on his instruments, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Engaging cloaking systems," he announced, activating the ship's defenses. The shuttle shimmered momentarily as it melded with the cosmos, becoming almost invisible to the naked eye. "We should be undetectable as long as we keep our energy output low." Rael leaned back in his seat, running a hand through his hair. "We made it past the Zenthari patrols, but that won't last long. We need to reach the base and secure our supplies before they regroup." "Right," I agreed, staring out at the vast, star-speckled darkness. "Let's hope the Resistance's old equipment is still operational. We need something substantial to take back the fight." The coordinates for the base flickered on the screen, a small dot in the grand scheme of the galaxy, hidden within an asteroid field. As we navigated through the field, the small rocks and debris created an obstacle course of dangers. But it also served as a natural barrier against the Zenthari, and we needed every advantage we could muster. "Stay sharp," Marcus warned as we entered the asteroid field, the shuttle's hull vibrating gently with the impact of tiny meteoroids. "If we collide with something too big, it could be catastrophic." I nodded, heart racing as I gripped the armrest of my seat. "What do we know about the base's defenses? Are we expecting Zenthari presence there?" "Unclear," Marcus replied, his voice steady as he piloted us through the treacherous terrain. "The last reports suggested it was abandoned, but we can't assume anything. We need to be prepared for any surprises." "Surprises are the last thing we need right now," Rael said, scanning the sensors. "Let's just hope the Resistance got everything out before the Zenthari caught up with them." The shuttle glided through the asteroid field, weaving between massive chunks of rock and debris. I felt a strange sense of awe at the beauty of it, all the shimmering dust by distant stars, the silence of space punctuated by the soft hum of our ship. But beneath that awe was a gnawing anxiety. Every second spent in this fragile sanctuary felt like an eternity, each passing moment a reminder of the Zenthari closing in. Finally, the base came into view, a dilapidated structure nestled in a hollowed-out asteroid, its once proud facade now overrun by time and neglect. Vines of alien flora crawled over the surface, and the exterior was pockmarked with scars from previous battles. "There it is," Marcus said, his tone filled with a mixture of nostalgia and apprehension. "Home, for a time." Rael stared at the base, uncertainty flickering across his features. "Looks like it could use a little love. Is there any chance the systems are still operational?" "We'll find out soon enough," I replied, feeling a mix of hope and trepidation. "Let's land and see what we can salvage." Marcus maneuvered the shuttle into the docking bay, the ancient machinery creaking as the landing gear made contact with the metal surface. I felt a rush of adrenaline course through my veins. We were about to step into a critical moment that could alter the course of our war. As the engines powered down, a heavy silence enveloped us. The only sounds were the distant echoes of our ship's cooling systems and the rhythmic thump of my heart. "Let's move," Marcus said, his voice firm as he released his harness and stood up. "We need to get inside and assess the situation. Keep your weapons ready." We disembarked from the shuttle, stepping onto the cold, metallic surface of the docking bay. My senses heightened as I took in our surroundings. Dim lights flickered overhead, casting shadows that danced across the walls. The air was thick with the scent of rust and neglect, but beneath that I detected a hint of something familiar: human ingenuity. We moved cautiously through the bay, weapons drawn, scanning for any signs of danger. The eerie silence was punctuated by the occasional creak of metal, a reminder that this place had once been a hub of activity, now reduced to whispers of its former glory. "Let's head to the control room first," Marcus suggested, leading the way down a narrow corridor. "If we can access the mainframe, we might be able to reactivate some systems and get a layout of the base." The corridor was dimly lit, the flickering lights casting an ominous glow. I felt a shiver run down my spine as we moved deeper into the structure. The memories of what this place had once represented haunted me. This was where brave men had stood against the Zenthari, where plans had been forged and battles fought. Now it was a tomb of forgotten hopes. As we reached the control room, I pushed open the heavy door, the sound echoing in the silence. The room was in disarray, displays cracked, consoles covered in dust, and scattered debris littering the floor. "Over there," Rael pointed, gesturing to a main console that seemed less damaged than the others. "That might still be functional." We hurried over, and Marcus began working on the controls. "Come on, baby, show me something," he muttered, fingers flying across the interface. The screen flickered, then powered up, revealing a map of the facility and its systems. "Got it," Marcus exclaimed, a spark of triumph lighting his eyes. "The power grid is still operational, and there's a weapons cache marked on the map." Rael leaned closer, studying the screen. "Let's check the cache first. We need those weapons to strengthen our position." "Agreed," I said, scanning the map for the quickest route. "We'll have to be cautious. If the Zenthari are here, we can't afford to be caught off guard." Marcus plotted our course, the three of us moving swiftly through the halls, the tension thick in the air. Each shadow felt alive, every creak and groan of the structure amplified in our heightened state of awareness. As we made our way toward the weapons cache, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting a Zenthari ambush. "Are you all right?" Rael asked, noticing my distraction. "Just a feeling," I replied, forcing myself to focus. "Let's keep moving." The cache was located in a secured room at the far end of the base, and as we approached, the tension escalated. The door was locked, but Marcus quickly worked his way through the security system, his expression intense with concentration. "Just a moment there," he said triumphantly as the door slid open with a hiss. revealing a small armory filled with a mixture of ancient human weapons and modern technology. My heart raced as I stepped inside, surveying the cache. I grabbed a rifle, its weight reassuring in my hands. "These are still in good condition," I remarked, inspecting the weapon. "We might be able to use these effectively." Marcus and Rael began arming themselves, and for the first time since we had escaped the Zenthari, a sense of confidence surged within me. This was what we needed: resources, strength, and hope. "Let's gear up and get ready to make our next move," Marcus said, his voice steady. "We'll need to gather intelligence and find out how to counter the Zenthari's advantage." Suddenly, an alarm blared through the base, piercing the tense atmosphere. My heart dropped as I exchanged a panicked glance with my companions. "They found us," Rael shouted, gripping his weapon tightly. "We need to move." "Stay calm," Marcus barked, already moving toward the door. "We'll find a way out." We dashed back into the corridor, adrenaline coursing through us. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the walls as we raced toward the nearest exit. I felt the ground tremble beneath us, the sound of distant explosions rumbling through the air. The Zenthari were closing in, and we had to act fast. "Where do we go?" I shouted, scanning our surroundings. "There's an emergency exit through the maintenance tunnels," Marcus replied, determination fueling his voice. "It'll lead us outside the base and into the surrounding asteroid field. We can make our way back to the shuttle." "Let's move," I urged, pushing forward. We turned down a side corridor, racing against time as the alarms blared louder. The air grew thick with tension, every second feeling like an eternity. As we reached the maintenance tunnel entrance, we skidded to a halt. The door was sealed tight, a panel blinking with a warning light. "Marcus, can you override it?" I asked, fear creeping into my voice. "I'll try." He rushed to the panel, fingers flying over the controls. "Come on, come on." Behind us, the echoes of Zenthari footsteps grew louder, urgency driving us to the edge of panic. "I've got it," Marcus shouted triumphantly as the door hissed open, revealing the dark, cramped space beyond. "Let's go," I yelled, pushing through the opening, Rael close on my heels. The tunnel was dim, with pipes running along the walls and the sound of distant machinery reverberating through the air. We moved quickly, the oppressive darkness weighing down on us as we navigated the narrow space. The sound of Zenthari voices echoed behind us, their orders sharp and demanding. We were running out of time. "Keep moving," Marcus urged, glancing over his shoulder. We pressed on, the tunnel twisting and turning, leading us deeper into the heart of the asteroid. Just ahead, I could see a faint light filtering through the darkness, a sign of an exit. As we reached the end of the tunnel, I felt a surge of hope. But as I pushed through the final door, the reality of our situation came crashing back. We emerged into a vast cavern filled with rubble and debris, the remnants of past battles scattered around us. The light we had seen was the glow of a nearby energy source, but the area was also filled with shadows of Zenthari soldiers, their weapons drawn, scanning the space. "Ambush!" Rael shouted, taking cover behind a pile of rubble. "Prepare for a fight," I yelled, adrenaline surging once more. We were cornered, with no immediate escape. The Zenthari soldiers advanced, their forms silhouetted against the flickering lights. "Hold your ground," Marcus commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We've got weapons now. Let's show them what we're made of." We fired our weapons, the air crackling with energy as bolts of light shot through the cavern. I felt the rush of battle course through me, the thrill of combat igniting my senses. But the Zenthari were numerous, their ranks closing in around us. We needed to plan a way to turn the tide in our favor. "Fall back to the cover," I shouted, retreating behind the rubble as we exchanged fire. "We can't hold them off like this." As we regrouped, I glanced around the cavern, searching for any advantage we could exploit. My eyes fell on a series of ancient weapons mounted on the wall's heavy artillery that could tip the scales of battle in our favor. "There," I pointed, my voice rising above the chaos. "If we can reach those weapons, we might stand a chance." "Let's go," Marcus shouted, rallying us. We charged forward, dodging incoming fire as we moved toward the mounted artillery. With each step, the adrenaline surged through me, the thrill of the fight pushing aside my fear. We reached the weapons, grabbing them as the Zenthari soldiers closed in. I felt the weight of the artillery in my hands, a sense of power flooding through me. "On my mark," Marcus called out, positioning himself next to me. "Ready," Rael shouted, adrenaline pumping through his veins. "Now," Marcus ordered, and we unleashed a barrage of fire upon the advancing Zenthari. The impact of our artillery sent shockwaves through the cavern, forcing the Zenthari to stagger back. The ground trembled, and the sound of chaos enveloped us as we fought to reclaim our ground. But as the smoke cleared, I felt a wave of uncertainty wash over me. We had gained ground, but how long could we hold out? "Push them back," I shouted, determination flooding my voice. "We can't let them take this base." The echoes of our artillery fire reverberated through the cavern, each shot a declaration of our determination to reclaim what was rightfully ours. The Zenthari soldiers, momentarily stunned, regrouped with fierce intensity, their voices rising in a guttural chorus of commands. The air crackled with tension as they pressed forward, determined to quash our desperate stand. "Keep firing," I shouted, my voice strained but resolute. "We can't let them breach our position." Rael and Marcus flanked me, their expressions a mix of fierce determination and steely resolve. We had made our stand, but the tide of battle surged against us, the Zenthari numbers overwhelming. With every second, the odds tilted unfavorably, and I could feel the weight of responsibility bearing down on my shoulders. "Cover me," Marcus yelled, shifting to a new position to get a better angle. I nodded, providing covering fire as he repositioned himself near the ancient artillery. His hands deftly adjusted the targeting system, and I could see the intensity in his eyes as he prepared to unleash a more devastating volley. "Let's make this count," Rael urged, sweat beading on his brow as he scanned our surroundings. The cavern, once a symbol of hope and resistance, had transformed into a battleground. Debris scattered around us, remnants of the old base, serving as both shelter and obstacle. Marcus took a deep breath, his finger hovering over the trigger. "On my mark," he steadied his aim, waiting for the perfect moment. The Zenthari were advancing, their alien forms menacing as they sought to close the distance. "Now," Marcus shouted, unleashing a torrent of fire that lit up the cavern in brilliant flashes. The explosion echoed, sending shockwaves through the air as several Zenthari soldiers were thrown back, their bodies crumpling under the sheer force of our firepower. "Keep pushing," I shouted, my own weapon firing in rhythm with Marcus's artillery. The tide was shifting, but we had to remain vigilant. The Zenthari regrouped, their commanders barking orders as they sought to flank us. "Fall back to the next position," I commanded, retreating to a higher ledge of the cavern. "We can create a choke point there." We scrambled back, taking our positions behind a cluster of rocks that provided a better vantage point. I peered over the edge, my heart racing as I watched the Zenthari struggle to regain their footing. Their eyes darted around, searching for us amid the chaos. "Reloading," Rael called out, slapping a new energy cell into his weapon. "We need to keep the pressure on them." "Agreed," I replied, breathing heavily. "We can't let them regroup. They'll come at us in waves if we give them a chance." The next wave of Zenthari soldiers surged forward, their grotesque forms charging with renewed ferocity. The sounds of their screeches mixed with the thunderous blasts of our weapons, creating a cacophony that filled the air. "Fire!" Marcus yelled, his voice cutting through the noise. We opened fire, our combined efforts creating a storm of energy that tore through the ranks of the Zenthari. I felt a surge of adrenaline as we fought, each shot finding its mark, but I knew it was only a matter of time before they would adapt. "Push them back," I shouted, feeling a flicker of hope igniting within me. We were gaining ground, our teamwork proving effective against the advancing enemies. Suddenly, a deafening explosion rocked the cavern, sending shockwaves through the ground. The ceiling trembled, and chunks of rock rained down around us, sending us scrambling for cover. "Get down," I yelled, instinctively throwing myself to the ground as debris fell. The Zenthari hesitated, their advance momentarily disrupted by the chaos. I seized the opportunity, quickly regrouping with Rael and Marcus. This is our chance, we can't let them recover. We emerged from our cover, unleashing a fresh wave of fire that struck the Zenthari as they attempted to regroup. Their formations shattered under the weight of our assault, and I could see the fear in their eyes as they realized we were not going down without a fight. "Keep it up! We're turning the tide," Rael shouted, his voice filled with urgency. As we pushed forward, I caught sight of a massive Zenthari commander, towering above the others. His presence exuded authority, and I could see him rallying the troops, shouting orders with a fierce intensity. This was their leader, the one orchestrating the attack. "We need to take him out," I yelled, my eyes locking onto the commander. "If we can eliminate their leadership, we might break their morale." Marcus nodded, determination etched across his face. "I'll create a distraction. You two flank him and take him down." "On it," Rael replied, his resolve unwavering. Marcus charged forward, drawing the attention of the Zenthari soldiers as he unleashed a barrage of fire. The commander turned, eyes narrowing as he focused on Marcus, giving us the opening we needed. "Let's move," I shouted, sprinting alongside Rael toward the commander. We maneuvered through the chaos, dodging incoming fire as we closed the distance. The Zenthari commander raised his weapon, unleashing a wave of energy that struck Marcus, sending him sprawling to the ground. My heart dropped, but I couldn't let fear take over. "Marcus," Rael yelled, glancing back. "Keep going, I'll be fine," Marcus shouted, his voice strained but determined. We pressed on, focusing on the commander as he turned his attention back to us. "You think you can defeat me, pathetic humans?" he bellowed, his voice booming in the cavern. With a surge of adrenaline, I and Rael charged forward, weapons raised. "We're not afraid of you," I shouted, determination flooding my veins. The commander laughed, a cruel sound that echoed through the chamber. "You are nothing but remnants of a bygone era. Your time is over." "Not if we have anything to say about it," I replied, unleashing a flurry of shots that struck the commander's armor, but it barely fazed him. "Stand together," Rael shouted, moving in sync with me as we prepared for a final assault. We had to strike hard and fast. As the commander raised his weapon to fire, I aimed carefully, drawing on every ounce of focus I had left. "Now," I yelled, unleashing a volley of energy just as Rael did the same. The combined force of our shots struck the commander squarely in the chest, causing him to stagger back, his eyes widening in shock. "Together," I shouted, charging forward with Rael at my side. We couldn't let up now. The Zenthari commander fell to one knee, a look of disbelief crossing his face. I could see the shift in the battle as his soldiers hesitated, uncertainty creeping into their ranks. "Finish him," Rael urged, and with a swift motion, I aimed for the commander's head. With a final pull of the trigger, the energy bolt struck true, and the commander fell to the ground, lifeless. The cavern erupted into chaos. The remaining Zenthari soldiers faltered, their confidence shattered. I could see them retreating, confusion and fear etched on their faces. "Keep pushing, don't let them escape," I yelled, adrenaline fueling my voice. The Zenthari began to scatter, their formations breaking apart as they fled. We had done it. We had turned the tide. "Marcus, are you all right?" Rael shouted, glancing back as we pressed our advantage. "I'm fine," Marcus grunted, rising to his feet and joining us. "We need to make sure they don't regroup." We charged forward, firing at the retreating Zenthari, the remnants of their ranks falling apart under our relentless assault. As the last of them fled, a sense of exhilaration surged through me. We had fought against insurmountable odds and emerged victorious. "Is it over?" Marcus asked, panting heavily as he surveyed the cavern, now littered with the remnants of the battle. "For now," I replied, allowing myself a moment to breathe. "But we need to regroup and figure out our next move." Rael nodded, still catching his breath. "We've got the weapons. We can fortify our defenses and prepare for the next assault. Agreed, I said, a renewed sense of purpose flooding through me. This is just the beginning. We have a chance to reclaim our legacy. We stood amidst the ruins of the cavern, the air thick with the acrid smell of burnt metal and the echo of our triumph still reverberating in our ears. The battle had been fierce, but we had pushed back the Zenthari, at least for now. I glanced at Rael and Marcus, both of them catching their breath as they scanned the remnants of the battlefield. Let's take stock of what we have, I suggested, feeling the adrenaline slowly ebbing away. We need to know what we're working with if we're going to plan our next move. Marcus nodded, already moving toward the ancient artillery. We should make sure these weapons are operational. If the Zenthari come back, we need to be ready. As we examined the massive artillery pieces, I felt a sense of pride swell within me. These weapons, relics of a time long forgotten, were now pivotal in our fight for survival. The intricate designs etched into the metal gleamed under the sparse lighting, each curve and line telling a story of humanity's ingenuity. I can recalibrate the targeting systems, Marcus said, crouching by the console and tapping at the control panel. If we can get these back online, we'll have a significant advantage. Rael and I took positions around him, keeping an eye out for any lingering Zenthari forces. The adrenaline was fading, but the urgency remained. We need to secure the perimeter, I reminded them. Let's not get complacent. The minutes ticked by as Marcus worked, his fingers dancing over the controls, occasionally muttering under his breath. Rael and I patrolled the edges of the cavern, scanning for movement. The tension hung heavy in the air, but the sounds of distant skirmishes echoed in the background, a reminder that the war was far from over. Finally, Marcus looked up, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. Got it. The targeting systems are operational. We can aim and fire in any direction. Excellent, I said, relief flooding my system. Let's set up a perimeter and prepare for any potential counterattack. We'll use this artillery to cover our position. Rael nodded, already moving to secure the surrounding area. I'll check our supplies. We need to make sure we have enough ammunition and provisions. As he moved off, I remained with Marcus, watching as he calibrated the artillery to our specifications. You really think we can turn the tide? He asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Absolutely, I replied, steeling my resolve. We've just shown them that we're not helpless. The Zenthari underestimated us, and that's a mistake they won't make again. His gaze drifted toward the distant sounds of battle. What if they regroup and come back stronger? What if they bring reinforcements? We'll be ready, I assured him, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. We've fought against impossible odds before. We can do it again. Just then, Rael returned, carrying a small stash of ammunition. I found some supplies hidden in a storage compartment. It's not much, but it'll help. He dropped the cash beside the artillery, examining our makeshift fortifications. Let's set up a defensive line, I said, pointing to various spots around the cavern. If the Zenthari return, we'll be ready to hold our ground. We quickly moved into action, positioning the artillery for maximum coverage. The atmosphere was tense, but our determination was unyielding. The ancient human weapon was now our lifeline, a testament to our resilience and ingenuity. Ready, Marcus called out, taking his position at the artillery console. Let's hold our ground, I commanded, feeling the weight of leadership settle on my shoulders. No matter what happens, we fight together. Hours passed, the sounds of distant skirmishes fading into an uneasy silence. I felt the tension in my bones, the anticipation of an inevitable confrontation. Each minute felt like an eternity, but we remained vigilant, our weapons at the ready. Just as I began to wonder if we were safe, the unmistakable sound of Zenthari war horns echoed through the cavern, sending a chill down my spine. They're coming, I shouted, adrenaline surging through me. Prepare yourselves, Rael urged, his voice steady despite the tension. I took my position beside Marcus, watching as the Zenthari soldiers began to emerge from the shadows, their ranks forming into a menacing wave. The commander's body lay among the rubble, but it seemed his subordinates had rallied, driven by vengeance. "Hold your fire until they get closer," I called out, my heart pounding as they advanced. "We need to make every shot count." The Zenthari surged forward, their alien forms glistening in the dim light. I could see the fierce determination in their eyes as they sought retribution. "Now," I shouted, raising my weapon as the first wave drew near. The artillery roared to life, a deafening explosion echoing through the cavern as we unleashed our firepower. The energy bolts tore through the ranks of the Zenthari, scattering them in a chaotic frenzy. "Reload! Keep firing!" Marcus yelled, his voice barely audible above the cacophony. We continued to unleash hell, the energy bolts the darkness as we fought against the tide of Zenthari. Each explosion brought with it a sense of exhilaration, our determination fueling our efforts. "Fall back! Regroup!" a Zenthari officer shouted, trying to maintain control over the chaos. But we were relentless, pushing forward and taking advantage of their disarray. The battlefield transformed into a symphony of explosions and screams, our ancient weapon proving its worth. "Keep pushing! We can't let them regroup," I yelled, the adrenaline coursing through me as we pressed our advantage. I could see the Zenthari faltering, their formations breaking apart as they struggled against our onslaught. "Now's our chance," I urged, rallying Marcus and Rael as we moved to the forefront. With a fierce shout, we charged forward, pressing into their ranks. The chaos was overwhelming, but we fought with a singular focus, each of us driven by the need to protect what was ours. "Together!" Rael shouted, his voice cutting through the noise as we surged into the heart of the Zenthari forces. The tide had turned, and we pressed our advantage, the Zenthari beginning to scatter. With every shot fired, I could see their resolve crumbling, and it fueled our determination. "We can win this!" I shouted, my voice rising above the din of battle. The roar of battle surrounded us, a chaotic blend of explosions and desperate cries. As we pushed deeper into the fray, I could feel the adrenaline surging through me, heightening my senses and fueling my resolve. The Zenthari were beginning to lose their footing, their once cohesive formations fracturing under our relentless assault. "Keep moving!" I shouted, urging Marcus and Rael to follow as we cut through the remnants of their ranks. My heart raced as we advanced, the thrill of victory just within reach. In the thick of the chaos, I spotted a Zenthari commander, his sleek armor gleaming under the sparse lighting of the cavern. He rallied a handful of soldiers, their eyes burning with fury as they prepared to retaliate. "We need to take him out," I yelled, motioning toward the commander. "If we can break their leadership, the rest will crumble." Marcus nodded, already adjusting his aim. "I'll get him," he declared, raising his weapon and taking careful aim at the Zenthari leader. "Hold on, wait for my signal," I cautioned, scanning the battlefield for any sign of danger. We couldn't afford to lose focus now, not when victory was so tantalizingly close. With a sharp intake of breath, I focused on the commander, feeling the weight of my responsibility settle over me. "Now!" I shouted, and Marcus pulled the trigger. The energy bolt shot through the air, a brilliant flash of light cutting through the haze of battle. It struck true, hitting the Zenthari commander squarely in the chest. He staggered backward, shock and disbelief flashing across his features before he crumpled to the ground. A collective gasp rippled through the remaining Zenthari, their resolve wavering. "Now's our chance! Push forward!" I called out, my voice carrying over the din of battle. We surged ahead, cutting down Zenthari soldiers with precision and fury. The tide of battle had shifted in our favor, and we were determined to capitalize on it. With each step, I felt a growing sense of triumph as we reclaimed our space, driving the Zenthari back toward the entrance of the cavern. But just as we thought victory was within our grasp, an ominous rumble echoed through the cave. The ground trembled beneath our feet, and a shuddering roar pierced the air, freezing us in place. "What was that?" Rael shouted, his eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," I replied, glancing around as the echoes of the battle faded into an unsettling silence. Suddenly, the cavern began to shake violently, stalactites crashing down around us. "We need to get out of here," "Now," I yelled, adrenaline spiking as I grabbed Marcus and Rael, pulling them toward the nearest exit. As we ran, I could see the Zenthari were just as alarmed, their eyes darting around in confusion. The battle was forgotten, replaced by a primal instinct to survive. We stumbled toward the light, the entrance to the cavern growing closer with each frantic step. But just as we reached the threshold, a deafening roar echoed behind us. I turned to see a massive creature emerge from the depths of the cavern, a terrifying amalgamation of rock and living tissue. Its eyes glowed like molten metal, and its gaping maw dripped with a viscous substance that hissed against the stone floor. "What the hell is that?" Marcus shouted, his voice barely audible over the creature's monstrous growl. "Run!" I yelled, adrenaline propelling me forward as we barreled out of the cavern, the creature hot on our heels. We stumbled into the daylight, the bright sun blinding after the dim confines of the cave. The open field before us was littered with the remnants of previous battles, scorched earth, twisted metal, and the scattered remains of fallen soldiers. The chaos of war was replaced by the distant sounds of the Zenthari regrouping, their shouts echoing across the plains. "Where do we go?" Rael panted, looking around frantically. "We can't stay here." "Head for the trees," I shouted, pointing to a dense line of foliage on the horizon. "We need to find cover and regroup." We sprinted toward the trees, the ground trembling beneath our feet as the creature burst from the cave, its roar shaking the air around us. I could feel its presence like a dark cloud, an overwhelming force that threatened to consume everything in its path. As we reached the tree line, I turned to see the creature emerging fully, towering above us like a living mountain. Its eyes locked onto me, and for a brief moment, I felt a chill run down my spine. I had faced many foes, but this was different. This was a primal force of nature, one that would not be easily defeated. "Get inside," I shouted, pushing Marcus and Rael ahead of me as we ducked into the cover of the trees. The dense foliage provided some protection, but I knew it wouldn't hold the creature back for long. As we caught our breath, I frantically assessed our options. The artillery was left behind in the chaos, and we were armed only with our sidearms. "We need a plan," I said, my voice low and urgent. "Can we lure it away?" Marcus suggested, his brow furrowed in thought. "If we can get it to follow us, maybe we can find a way to trap it or lead it into a weak point." "It won't be easy," I replied, weighing our options. "But it's our best chance. We need to create a distraction." Rael's eyes lit up with a sudden idea. "What if we set a fire? We could use the smoke to draw it away and then regroup with the others." "Not a bad idea," I admitted, glancing at the surrounding trees. "But we need to be careful. We don't want to draw the Zenthari's attention either." With a plan forming, we moved quickly to gather dry leaves and branches, constructing a makeshift pile. I could hear the creature thrashing around in the distance, its growls echoing through the trees, a constant reminder of the danger we faced. "Light it," I urged, as Rael struck a match, flames licking the kindling with eagerness. The fire caught quickly, sending thick plumes of smoke spiraling into the air. "Now let's move," I shouted, leading the way as we sprinted deeper into the forest, hoping the smoke would draw the creature's attention. The sound of crackling leaves underfoot filled the air as we ran, my heart racing. The creature's roars grew louder, and I could sense its confusion as it tried to pinpoint our location. We had to act fast. As we pushed further into the dense underbrush, I could hear the Zenthari in the distance, their voices rising in alarm as they realized the creature was loose. "We've stirred up a hornet's nest," Marcus gasped, glancing back toward the billowing smoke. "We have to keep moving," I urged, knowing that the creature was no longer our only concern. The Zenthari would be hunting for us, and we needed to stay one step ahead. Just as we rounded a bend in the trees, a massive figure loomed before us. It was another Zenthari, this one clad in armor and wielding a fearsome weapon. "Stop," he commanded, his voice booming. I felt a surge of panic. "This way," I shouted, veering off the path as I dashed to the right. Rael and Marcus followed closely, their breaths coming in quick gasps. We wove through the trees, dodging branches and underbrush as the sounds of pursuit echoed behind us. "Where do we go now?" Rael panted, glancing over his shoulder. "Follow me," I shouted, leading them deeper into the forest, away from the sounds of battle. We ran until we could no longer hear the distant chaos, finally collapsing against a large tree, our bodies trembling with exhaustion. "Is everyone okay?" I asked, catching my breath. "We're alive," Marcus replied, a shaky laugh escaping his lips. "But we need to regroup and figure out our next move." I nodded, scanning the surroundings. "We need to find the others. If we can bring them back, we'll stand a better chance against both the Zenthari and that creature." As we caught our breath, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread settling in my stomach. We had won a battle today, but the war was far from over. With the ancient weapon in our possession, we had a chance, but it wouldn't be easy. "We'll need to strategize," I said, determination hardening my resolve. "This war is far from over, but we will find a way to end it together." And in that moment, as we gathered ourselves and prepared to face the challenges ahead, I felt a glimmer of hope. Humanity had survived against the odds before, and we would do it again. Together, we would reclaim our legacy. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and scorched earth as we emerged from the forest, the remnants of the battle echoing in my mind like a haunting melody. I stood at the edge of the clearing, surveying the landscape that had once been our battleground. The remnants of the Zenthari lay scattered around us, twisted metal, shattered armor, and the echoes of a war that had raged for millennia. I glanced at Marcus and Rael, who were both catching their breath beside me, their expressions a mix of relief and disbelief. "We did it," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "We actually won." "It doesn't feel real," Marcus replied, shaking his head. "After everything we've been through, to finally see the end." His voice trailed off, lost in the enormity of what we had achieved. Rael stepped forward, eyes wide as he pointed toward the remnants of the Zenthari command. "Look," he exclaimed, excitement bubbling in his voice. "They're starting to retreat. They know they've lost." I squinted, straining to see the distant figures of the Zenthari soldiers fleeing the battlefield. It was true the tide had turned completely. With their leader fallen and the ancient weapon now in our possession, they had lost their will to fight. As the echoes of the last skirmishes faded into silence, a profound stillness enveloped us. It was a moment of reflection, a time to process the weight of our victory. But as I stood there, I felt an unease creeping into my heart. The Zenthari might have retreated for now, but I knew they wouldn't be gone forever. Their defeat would leave a power vacuum, and with it, the possibility of new threats. "We should gather the others," I said, breaking the silence. "We need to discuss our next steps and how to ensure that this peace holds." As we made our way back to the camp, the sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm glow over the land. The landscape had changed, but the memories of the battle still lingered like a shadow. I could feel the weight of the ancient weapon strapped to my back, a symbol of our struggle and a reminder of the sacrifices made to achieve this hard-won peace. Arriving at the camp, I was greeted by a mixture of cheers and somber faces. Some celebrated our victory, while others mourned the losses we had endured. I felt a pang of sadness at the sight of our fallen comrades. Each one had a story, a life that had been extinguished in the fight for freedom. "We need to honor them," I declared, my voice ringing with conviction. "Their bravery brought us here, and we will not forget their sacrifice." A wave of agreement rippled through the crowd. People began gathering around, forming a circle to remember those we had lost. Stories were shared, laughter and tears mingling as we recounted the moments that had defined our struggle. Among the crowd, I spotted a familiar face, Elias, one of the former Zenthari captives who had joined our cause. He stood at the edge of the gathering, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. I approached him, feeling a kinship that had formed during our time together. "Thank you for being here, Elias," I said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Your bravery made a difference today." He nodded, his voice steady but emotional. "I never thought I would fight for humanity, but you showed me that there is strength in unity, even between our peoples." With a newfound resolve, we continued the ceremony, lighting candles in remembrance of our fallen. As the flames flickered in the twilight, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was not just a victory for humanity, it was a chance to forge a new future, one built on cooperation and understanding. Days turned into weeks as we began the arduous task of rebuilding. The camp had transformed from a makeshift refuge to a center of hope and collaboration. We welcomed the Zenthari who sought to abandon their warlike ways and join us in forging a new path. Every day brought new challenges, but we faced them head-on, determined to create a society that valued peace over conflict. Workshops were established, where humans and Zenthari worked side by side, sharing their skills and knowledge. I often found myself in discussions with Marcus and Rael, brainstorming ways to integrate our two cultures. We had developed a plan to teach both humans and Zenthari the art of diplomacy, instilling the values of communication and compromise in future generations. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, I found myself standing by the newly constructed training area. Marcus joined me, his expression thoughtful. "Do you think we can really make this work?" he asked, glancing around at the bustling camp, where laughter mingled with the sounds of hammering and construction. "I believe we can," I replied, my gaze fixed on the horizon. "But it won't be easy. Trust takes time to build, especially after centuries of war." "I know," Marcus said, running a hand through his hair. "But we have to try. If we don't, what was it all for?" His words resonated deep within me. We had fought for freedom and peace, but the true test lay ahead. As the days passed, I noticed a shift in the atmosphere. Where once there was suspicion and animosity, a sense of camaraderie began to take root. Humans and Zenthari shared stories of their respective cultures, finding common ground in their experiences. One day, Rael approached me with a proposition. I was thinking, why not organize a festival, a celebration of our newfound peace? His enthusiasm was contagious. "A festival sounds great," I agreed, a smile spreading across my face. "It would be an excellent way to strengthen our bonds and honor those we've lost." Planning for the festival took on a life of its own. We arranged food, music, and activities that represented both cultures. The day of the festival arrived, and I stood at the edge of the clearing, excitement bubbling within me. As the festivities began, laughter and music filled the air. Humans and Zenthari danced together, their movements blending seamlessly in a celebration of unity. I watched as children from both sides played games, their laughter a reminder of the innocence we fought to protect. But amidst the joy, a shadow lingered at the back of my mind. I kept an eye on the horizon, aware that the Zenthari leaders who had fled might still pose a threat. As the sun set and the stars twinkled overhead, I gathered everyone around a large bonfire. "Tonight, we celebrate not just our victory, but the bonds we are forming," I began, my voice steady. "We are writing a new story together, one of hope and understanding. Together, we will build a future that honors the sacrifices of those we've lost." The crowd erupted in cheers, and I felt a swell of pride in my chest. We were no longer defined by the wars of the past, but were united in our pursuit of a better future. However, as the festival continued, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The Zenthari leaders had been silent since our victory, and I feared what that silence meant. The following morning, I called for a meeting with our council, human and Zenthari alike. We gathered in the main tent, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. "We need to address the potential threat posed by the remaining Zenthari factions," I said, looking around the room. "While we celebrate our achievements, we cannot forget that there are still those who wish to see us fail." Elias, who had become an integral part of our council, nodded in agreement. "I have heard whispers among my people. There are factions that believe the war is not over, that they must retaliate against us." "Then we need to act," Rael replied, his voice firm. "We can't allow fear to dictate our actions. We must extend an olive branch, but we also need to be prepared for anything." I considered his words carefully. What if we send emissaries to reach out to those factions? We can show them that we are committed to peace, but we are also willing to defend ourselves if necessary." The council members murmured in agreement, and we began to formulate a plan. Our aim was to establish a dialogue with the remaining Zenthari leaders, to encourage them to join our coalition rather than continue the cycle of violence. In the following days, I chose a small group of trusted allies to accompany me on this mission: Marcus, Rael, and Elias. We would venture into Zenthari territory to seek out their leaders and present our case for peace. As we prepared to leave, a sense of determination filled me. This was a crucial step in our journey toward a lasting peace, and I would do everything in my power to ensure that it succeeded. Our travels took us into the heart of the Zenthari territory, a stark contrast to the lush forests we had come to know. The landscape was barren and rugged, with jagged mountains rising in the distance. It was a reminder of the harsh conditions that had shaped the Zenthari's culture strength forged in adversity. After days of travel, we finally reached a makeshift Zenthari camp. The atmosphere was tense, and I could feel the weight of the unspoken history pressing down on us as we approached their leaders. As we entered the camp, I spotted a group of Zenthari warriors gathered around a central figure, an imposing woman adorned in ornate armor. She was the leader of one of the strongest factions, known for her tactical prowess and fierce determination. "Greetings," I said, stepping forward with my allies beside me. "I am here to speak on behalf of the united coalition of humans and Zenthari who seek to build a lasting peace between our peoples." The Zenthari leader narrowed her eyes, assessing us with a steely gaze. "And why should we trust you? Your kind has waged war against us for centuries. What has changed?" "Everything has changed," I replied, my voice steady. "We stand here not as enemies, but as allies. We have fought against a common threat and emerged victorious. We have the chance to create something new, to break the cycle of hatred and violence." A murmur ran through the crowd as the Zenthari considered my words. The tension in the air was palpable, and I held my breath, hoping to see signs of understanding. "You think peace is so easily achieved?" the leader scoffed. "It takes more than words to build trust. Your actions will determine our fate." I nodded, fully aware of the weight of her statement. "I agree. We must prove our commitment to peace through our actions. That is why I have come to you today. Let us work together to ensure that this war ends for good." After a long pause, the Zenthari leader finally spoke. "Very well. We will consider your proposal. But know this, if you betray us again, it will not end well for you." Her words were a double-edged sword, both a warning and an invitation. As we exchanged cautious nods, I felt a sense of hope blooming within me. Perhaps this was the beginning of a new chapter, one defined by cooperation rather than conflict. As we prepared to leave the camp, I looked back at the Zenthari leader, who watched us with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. We had a long road ahead, but if we could establish trust, we could create a future free from the chains of our past. As the dust settled from the final confrontation with the Zenthari, a new dawn broke over our world, one tinged with the promise of a brighter future. The remnants of war were still etched into our landscape, but the air now thrummed with possibility. The victory was not just a cessation of conflict. It marked the dawn of a new era for humanity and our newfound Zenthari allies. In the weeks following our victory, the camp transformed into a bustling hub of activity. The festival had united us in ways I had never imagined, and the camaraderie that blossomed was palpable. We were no longer just humans or Zenthari. We were a coalition, a new race forged from the ashes of ancient enmity. Our first order of business was to establish a council that represented both sides. It was a delicate balance, as the wounds of war still ran deep. Marcus, Rael, Elias, and I became part of this council, working tirelessly to draft a charter that would guide our alliance. We gathered every evening under the stars, the vastness of the universe reminding us of the stakes at play. As we discussed, debated, and sometimes clashed, I felt the weight of our responsibility. We were shaping the future not just for ourselves, but for generations yet unborn. One night, As the fire crackled and shadows danced around us, I spoke up, breaking the silence. What if we take our coalition beyond the confines of our world? What if we explore the stars together? Marcus raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Are you suggesting we become an interstellar society? That's ambitious. It's more than ambitious, it's necessary, I replied, my heart racing at the thought. We've spent millennia fighting each other, but together we could harness our strengths to explore the universe. We have the ancient weapon, which we've repurposed into a tool for peace and exploration. Elias nodded in agreement. The technology we uncovered during our battles could serve us well. We've seen what humanity is capable of when united. Why not extend that into the cosmos? Rael's face lit up with excitement. Imagine what we could discover. New worlds, new civilizations. We could be pioneers. The idea took root, and in the following days, our discussions shifted focus. We began drafting plans for an expedition, a united fleet of ships capable of traversing the stars. We pooled our resources, utilizing both human ingenuity and Zenthari technology to construct a fleet unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. As the council worked on logistics, I found myself consumed by thoughts of exploration. What awaited us beyond the familiar confines of our world? Would we encounter other species, or would we find remnants of ancient civilizations that had risen and fallen long before our time? With each passing day, our fleet began to take shape. The massive hangars buzzed with activity, workers from both sides collaborating, sharing knowledge, and forging bonds. It was exhilarating to witness each ship a testament to our collective strength. But amid the excitement, a nagging worry lingered in the back of my mind. The Zenthari leaders who had fled were still out there, lurking in the shadows, plotting their return. As we prepared to take this monumental step into the stars, we had to remain vigilant. Finally, the day of our departure arrived. The launch site was alive with energy, a palpable buzz of anticipation coursing through the air. Our fleet stood proudly before us, sleek ships adorned with symbols representing our newfound unity. The sun rose slowly in the sky, casting a warm glow over the horizon, as if the universe itself was blessing our endeavor. I stood at the front of the assembly, flanked by Marcus, Rael, and Elias. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter for humanity and the Zenthari, I proclaimed, my voice echoing across the gathering. No longer are we defined by our past. Today, we become explorers, discoverers of the unknown. Let us venture forth into the cosmos, hand in hand. A cheer erupted from the crowd, a symphony of voices celebrating our collective determination. As the sound reverberated around us, I felt a surge of hope, a belief that we were capable of achieving greatness together. As we boarded our ships, the excitement was palpable. I took my place at the helm of the lead vessel, the Starbound, a ship crafted from the fusion of human and Zenthari technology. Its sleek design and advanced systems reflected the best of both worlds. With a final wave to the crowd, I activated the ship's engines. The hum of power coursed through the vessel as we prepared for launch. A series of lights blinked to life on the control panel, signaling that we were ready. As we lifted off, I gazed out at the familiar landscape of our world shrinking beneath us. I felt a pang of nostalgia, but it was overshadowed by excitement for what lay ahead. We were no longer bound by the conflicts of the past. We were embarking on a journey that would redefine our place in the universe. Once we reached the edge of the atmosphere, I engaged the warp drive, and the stars blurred into streaks of light as we plunged into the depths of space. The exhilaration of travel coursed through my veins, a reminder of our shared purpose and newfound freedom. Our journey took us through unexplored regions of space, past nebulae shimmering with colors I had never dreamed existed. As we navigated through the cosmos, we recorded everything, every anomaly, every celestial body, every moment of beauty. Each discovery fueled our desire to explore further, to understand the universe that had always been just beyond our reach. Weeks passed as we traversed the stars, forging connections with other species and sharing our story. We encountered planets rich in resources, civilizations with cultures that fascinated us, and technological advancements that left us in awe. With every interaction, our understanding of the galaxy deepened. But as our coalition grew, so did the tensions. Whispers of dissent began to circulate among our ranks. Some humans expressed concern over the Zenthari presence in our fleet, while Zenthari warriors questioned our motivations. Old fears threatened to resurface, and I could feel the cracks forming in the fragile alliance we had fought so hard to build. One evening, as we gathered in the ship's common area, I decided to address the growing unease. "I know tensions are rising," I began, scanning the faces of my friends and allies. "But we must remember why we're here. We came together to explore the stars, to learn, and to share. We cannot let the shadows of our past define our future." Marcus chimed in, his voice steady. "We've seen the wonders of collaboration. We've accomplished so much together. Let's not forget that." Rael nodded, his enthusiasm undeterred. "Each of us brings something unique to the table. Our differences make us stronger, not weaker. We can't let fear dictate our actions." With their support, I felt a renewed sense of determination. "Let's hold a council meeting, where everyone can voice their concerns. We need to address this head-on, together." The council meeting was set for the following day, and as the time approached, I could feel the weight of our collective anxieties pressing down on me. The common area filled with faces, some eager, others apprehensive, as we gathered to discuss our shared future. I opened the meeting, trying to project confidence despite my own doubts. "Thank you all for coming. Today, we'll discuss our goals moving forward and address any concerns that have arisen since we began our journey." As I scanned the room, I noticed a group of humans standing together, their expressions a mixture of determination and distrust. I gestured for them to speak. "Let's hear from you first. What are your concerns?" A tall human man stepped forward, crossing his arms. "I just don't understand why we're putting our lives in the hands of the Zenthari. They were our enemies for centuries. How can we trust them?" A murmur of agreement rippled through the human contingent, and I felt a chill in the air. "I understand your fear," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "But we've fought alongside the Zenthari, and they've proven their commitment to peace. Trust is built through action, and they've shown us that they want to be a part of this journey." Another human chimed in. "What happens if we encounter hostile forces? Are we truly prepared to defend ourselves if our Zenthari allies turn against us?" Rael, seated beside me, leaned forward, a fire in his eyes. "You speak of distrust, but have you considered that we are all here for the same purpose? To explore and thrive together. We have shared victories, and we've faced dangers as a united front. To turn against one another now would be our greatest mistake." The room grew quiet as his words sank in. It was a delicate moment, one where we had to decide whether we would let fear drive us apart or choose to stand together. A Zenthari warrior, tall and regal, stepped forward, his voice resonant and calm. "You humans speak of mistrust, but understand that we, too, have sacrificed much. We have lost comrades and faced insurmountable odds. We want to explore the universe alongside you, not as enemies, but as friends." His sincerity touched a chord in the assembly, and I saw hesitant faces begin to soften. It was a small victory, but one I hoped could pave the way for understanding. As discussions continued, we identified shared goals: the desire for exploration, knowledge, and peace. Slowly, the tension in the room began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of purpose. With the council meeting concluding on a positive note, we left the common area buoyed by a newfound sense of unity. Yet, I remained vigilant. The echoes of distrust still lingered, and I knew that the journey ahead would require us to remain steadfast in our commitment to one another. Days turned into weeks as we continued our exploration of the stars. We charted new territories, encountering fascinating civilizations and sharing our knowledge. Each encounter reinforced the idea that we were stronger together, and I was hopeful that our alliance could withstand the pressures of the unknown. However, whispers of dissent still simmered beneath the surface. During one quiet evening, while reviewing star maps in the ship's command center, Marcus entered, a troubled expression etched on his face. "I've been hearing unsettling rumors," he said. leaning against the console. Some of the crew are questioning our mission. They don't trust the Zenthari. I sighed, rubbing my temples. I know. We addressed this at the council meeting, but it seems old fears are hard to shake. We need to do something before it escalates, Marcus replied, his voice steady. Perhaps another meeting, but this time, let's focus on our successes and the bonds we've forged. I considered his suggestion. You're right. We should celebrate our achievements. Let's plan a festival, much like the one we held after the war. Remind everyone of our shared journey and victories. As we laid out our plans for the festival, I felt a glimmer of hope. If we could bring our people together once more, perhaps we could solidify our alliance. The day of the festival arrived, and the common area buzzed with excitement. We decorated the ship with lights and banners, the atmosphere reminiscent of our victory celebration. The sound of laughter and chatter filled the air as humans and Zenthari mingled, sharing stories of their journeys and experiences. Marcus, Rael, and I took turns speaking, recounting our adventures and highlighting the triumphs we had achieved together. The more we celebrated our unity, the more the walls of distrust began to crumble. As the night progressed, I felt a sense of belonging I had never experienced before. We danced under the stars, laughter echoing through the ship as we forged connections that transcended the boundaries of our species. But as the festivities reached their peak, a shadow fell over the event. The alarm klaxon blared, piercing the joyful atmosphere. My heart raced as I turned to Marcus. What's happening? He rushed to the control panel, scanning the screens. We've detected a ship approaching an unregistered vessel. They're not responding to our hails. Rael stood beside us, tension palpable. Could it be the Zenthari loyalists? I can't say for sure, Marcus replied, urgency in his voice. But we need to prepare for anything. As we rallied the crew, I felt the weight of our fragile alliance pressing down on me. We had come so far, and now the threat of conflict loomed once more. The atmosphere on the starbound shifted from celebration to tension as we prepared for the potential confrontation. The crew sprang into action, moving swiftly to their stations, eyes trained on the approaching vessel. Can you identify their ship? I asked Marcus, my pulse quickening. He worked furiously at the control panel. It's a Zenthari ship, but it's heavily modified. We can't get a clear read on their intentions. Rael's expression hardened. We should assume the worst. If they're loyalists, they won't hesitate to attack. I nodded, my mind racing. Prepare to engage defensive protocols. We need to show them we're ready to defend ourselves, but let's not fire unless absolutely necessary. As the ship drew closer, I could make out the detail's dark metal hulls adorned with aggressive insignias that sent a chill down my spine. The Zenthari loyalists had come to reclaim what they believed was rightfully theirs. Commander, they're hailing us, Marcus said, his voice tense. Put it on screen, I commanded, standing tall as the image of a Zenthari commander flickered to life. He was imposing, his sharp features and icy gaze radiating authority. Humans, he began, his voice cold. You have allied with the very species that betrayed us. You will pay for your treachery. We are not your enemies, I replied, trying to project confidence. We fought against a common foe and emerged victorious. We seek peace. Peace, he sneered. Your kind has a history of betrayal. We will not allow you to forget your past. Before I could respond, the screen went dark, and alarms blared once more. The loyalist had begun to maneuver into position, weapons charging. Brace for impact, I shouted, adrenaline surging through me as I took my place at the helm. The loyalist ship fired first, a barrage of plasma bolts slamming into our shields. The starbound shuddered under the impact, but our shields held. I felt the strength of my crew beside me, the bond we had forged in the heat of battle fueling my resolve. Return fire, I ordered, and the crew responded without hesitation. Our weapons charged, and I felt the familiar thrill of combat as we unleashed our own barrage of fire. The battle unfolded with an intensity I had never experienced before. We dodged and weaved through the void, engaging in a deadly dance of tactics and strategy. As we fought, I couldn't shake the thought that this conflict threatened to undo everything we had built. "Target their weapons," I commanded, our shots finding their mark. The Loyalist ship staggered, its firepower weakening, but they were relentless. A sudden jolt sent me crashing against the control panel. "Status report," I shouted, regaining my composure. "Shields down to 30%, Marcus replied, his face grim. "We need to disable their ship, or we won't make it." "We have to try one last push," I said, determination hardening my resolve. All remaining energy to forward weapons. We go in close and hit them with everything we've got. As we closed the distance, I could feel the tension coiling within me. This was our chance to prove ourselves, to show the Loyalists that we would not back down. With one final charge, I pressed the button to fire, and our weapons unleashed a powerful blast that struck true. The Loyalist ship erupted in a blaze of light, and I felt a surge of relief wash over me. But the victory was bittersweet. The echoes of our battle lingered in the silence, a reminder of the cost of conflict. As we navigated the aftermath, I couldn't shake the feeling that our struggles were far from over. The battle against the Zenthari Loyalists left us shaken but resolute. As we surveyed the wreckage of the Loyalist ship drifting into the void, I felt a hollow victory settle in. We had defended ourselves, but the taste of blood and conflict lingered heavily in the air. In the days that followed, the crew operated in a somber mood. The festival that had united us now felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the harsh reality of our situation. I knew I needed to do something to heal the rifts that had formed, both within our ranks and between the humans and Zenthari. I called for another council meeting, inviting both humans and Zenthari to participate. The room was tense as we assembled, wary glances exchanged across the table. I took a deep breath, hoping to reignite the spark of unity we had once felt. "We've faced darkness together," I began, my voice steady. "But we mustn't let fear divide us. We need to remember our shared goals to explore, to understand, and to build a future." Rael nodded. "The Loyalists do not speak for all Zenthari. We must continue to show them that our alliance is stronger than any faction seeking to tear us apart." Marcus interjected. "We need to focus on our successes. We've made great strides together, and we cannot allow one group to dictate our future." As we spoke, the atmosphere began to shift. Slowly but surely, voices of support emerged, with individuals sharing their own experiences and fears. But just as the tide seemed to turn, a Zenthari warrior stood up, his expression hardening. "You may speak of unity, but the reality is that we are seen as traitors by our own kind. Many of us still bear the scars of war." His words hung heavy in the air, and I felt the weight of his pain. It was true. The divisions ran deeper than I had realized. "Then let's address that," I said firmly. "Let's reach out to the Zenthari who are still in hiding. Show them that we can protect them. We need to prove that this coalition can stand against any threat together." A murmur of agreement spread through the assembly. The suggestion hung in the air, promising hope amidst the turmoil. After the meeting, we began to strategize. We reached out to Loyalists who had escaped the battle, using our contacts to facilitate discussions. The Zenthari warriors on our ship banded together, their fierce determination to protect their kin shining through. Days turned into weeks as we searched for the Loyalist factions. We navigated through dangerous territories, but I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Each encounter brought us closer, not just to our Zenthari allies, but to a greater understanding of ourselves. During one fateful encounter, we finally discovered a hidden base on a desolate planet. The Loyalists had gathered there, their numbers swelling as they rallied against our coalition. "Are we ready for this?" Marcus asked, tension palpable in the air as we prepared to make contact. "We have to be," I replied, my heart racing. This could change everything. As we descended onto the planet's surface, I felt the weight of our mission settle on my shoulders. This was our chance to mend the rifts between our peoples and bring an end to the cycle of violence. When we arrived, I stood before the assembled Zenthari Loyalists, their faces a mixture of anger and mistrust. I raised my hands, trying to convey peace. I am not here to fight. We've come to show you that we can be allies. We can build a future together. The tension in the air crackled as the loyalists murmured among themselves. A tall Zenthari warrior stepped forward, his gaze piercing. You expect us to trust the humans after what they've done? I understand your pain, I replied, my voice steady. But our fight is not against you. We seek to protect our future, and we cannot do that divided. Your words are empty, he retorted. We have fought for our people's honor. We cannot simply forget the past. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. We are all shaped by our pasts, but we must choose our future. Together, we can create a legacy of peace and understanding. Silence enveloped the group, and I could feel the weight of their decision hanging in the air. Slowly, one by one, they began to lower their weapons. Hope flickered in their eyes. Perhaps we can talk, the warrior said, finally lowering his weapon. But know this, it will take time to rebuild what was lost. I nodded, gratitude flooding through me. Then let's take that time, together. As we began to talk, I felt the dawn of a new era unfolding. Humanity's place among the stars was no longer one of isolation, but of unity, forged through the fires of conflict and tempered by understanding. Together, we would write our destiny, leaving behind the shadows of the past and reaching for the light of a shared future.